with these new text messages. This is 3 days in a row now. Now it starts off with they're going to have a big media strategy. That was the first thing. And let's get into where we are today with the Washington Post and New York Times.
Well, I think this is the smoking gun that the FBI, particularly Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, possibly Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director of the FBI, were leaking information to the media about none other than Carter Page. In April 2017, Sean, we have information in these text messages that they specifically state that the New York Times is upset with the scoop that was given to the Washington Post. Well, on April 14th or April 11th is when the Washington Post actually published a story confirming that there was a FISA warrant on Carter Page. I think about this, Sean. They were actually confirming a secret warrant to spy on an American citizen publicly with a newspaper. If all of this pans out to be true, these are, in their own words, these are text messages from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page, basically confirming that the FBI leaked information to the Washington Post. I spoke with Carter Page. He again said this is the biggest charade he's ever seen. Today he is just dumbfounded at the fact that they would go this far, but it didn't surprise him.
Yeah, Gregg Jarrett, let's get into this. If you really break it down, all the evidence we have here, let's see, the FBI, DOJ leaking. Now we know the CIA is leaking. Where did the dossier leak come from? Don't we believe that came from the Director of National Intelligence at the time?
He
all
leaked
Obama
it, he
officials.
leaked it to the media, but the instigator was John Brennan, CIA director.
So let's talk about what it means.
When powerful forces in government abuse their trust to subvert the legal process, and when the media is complicit by condoning corrupt behavior and failing deliberately to tell the truth, democracy is threatened. And that's what happened here. The alphabet agencies of the intelligence community, the FBI, the DNI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, they were all involved in doing the same thing, leaking false information about Donald Trump and his associates to damage Trump and to, in the end, try to undo the election results. It is a cesspool of corruption and the people who did this, they need to be brought to justice if they committed crimes. And I can identify a variety of crimes, including abuse of power and obstruction of justice and perjury.
All right, we're not getting at this very quickly, though. I mean, we thought we had all the Strzok Page text. There was a lot of talk earlier this week, Sarah, that in fact there might be unredacted material that included the 302s, which Steele and Bruce Orr in particular. It might include the FISA warrant, more particularly the one that was signed, the last one by Rod Rosenstein. We talked about that conflict last night. Also, the Gang of Eight information that's never been released. And, you know, I read people and commenting, they're saying Hannity and Sara Carter and Gregg are full of crap. But in fact, this information does exist. It can be declassified and unredacted. Why hasn't it been?
I believe it will be. All the sources that I've spoken with say that the White House is reviewing this, that the president will declassify all of these documents. We have to understand right now, of course, the hurricane is barreling down. This is probably not the time to release those documents. I would assume that the president will do this as soon as possible, particularly with all this new information coming forward. Sean, those FISA documents are absolutely necessary. They need to be declassified. Even more importantly, I think along with those FISA documents, hey, look, they leaked it to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, apparently according to their own text messages. They didn't seem that concerned about the secrecy of the FISA document. If they were willing to give it out at the same time that James Comey was actually signing a FISA renewal, because during this time, James Comey himself signed the third FISA renewal, and then in June, Rod Rosenstein signed the last. So if they were okay with leaking this to the Washington Post, we should be able to see those documents, as well as the dossier that was given to the Gang of Eight, which I have been told holds an enormous amount of exculpatory evidence that was withheld from the FISC court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance
So we
Court.
have all these the biggest players with the powerful tools of intelligence that they're available. You know, the CIA leaking like mad, Greg. Right. Then the dossier leak. then Strzok and Page, then Comey. McCabe is mentioned in these new text messages. He knew about it. What happens when you leak this kind of information to the press, and they're the people, in the case of Strzok and Page and others, involved in the investigation that is ongoing?
Well, if any of it involved grand jury information, that's a crime. It's also a crime called obstruction of justice. If you're using your government job to interfere in an otherwise legitimate investigation, and it's a crime to launch an illegitimate investigation to deprive people of their rights. All of those are crimes, and if those crimes were committed, these people ought to be indicted for it, and you've named a great many of them, and they're all in my book as well.
All right, thank you both. Text messages between Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mark Meadows. All right, it all started 2 days ago with the media strategy, and drip by drip, we keep getting more and more of these text messages. What do we see, Congressman Meadows? It looks like the FBI, DOJ, now the CIA, leaking all this information before the election, after the election, all designed to destroy Trump. Some of them are involved in leading an investigation supposedly against them.
Well, obviously, today's new text messages would suggest that the media leak strategy was exactly what we surmised in the letter that we sent to Rod Rosenstein just a couple of days ago. I think, but the bigger context of this is that this is not the end of it. I can say the Department of Justice has been working with Jim and I to get us additional documents. And I can tell you, there are dozens of other documents that would support the fact that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page had ongoing relationships with multiple reporters, and that they were feeding them information to spin a narrative against this president. No, it's not legal. It's against protocol. But the other thing is they are denying it, and we have the proof that would suggest otherwise. So, good reporting tonight on behalf of Catherine and Sarah with these text messages. But I can tell you this: we believe that all the documents need to be made available to the American people. Let them judge. We have nothing to hide. The president has nothing to hide. Let's get it out there.
Well, let's talk about that, Jim Jordan. Look, a lot of people, including me, are frustrated because we've been waiting and requesting, Congress has requested, and it's been denied again and again and again, and there's been constant obstruction. But specifically, there is something apparently on pages 10 through 12, 17 through 34 of the Rod Rosenstein, when the signature of the third FISA renewal, the fourth warrant altogether, 302s, which would get into more detail with Christopher Steele and Bruce Orr. They were trying to Steele was trying to feed his information, funnel it through Bruce Orr to Robert Mueller's group, which conflicts them, I think. Then, of course, you've got the Gang of Eight information. Then I think at some point we should get all the Strzok Page text messages and correspondence. When are we going to get this information? People are frustrated.
Hopefully soon. Transparency is a good thing. Here's what's so frustrating about the dossier was a big lie. So what they did is they said, this is a big lie. The more people we can get talking about the dossier, the more likely it is they'll believe the lie. So that's why they had this leak strategy to support a document that was the basis for everything. That's the big problem here. They took that document, the dossier, untrue document. They took it to the secret court and didn't tell the court important facts to get a warrant to spy on the other
you're saying
campaign.
It nicely. Didn't they purposely lie to the FISA court, purposely withhold pertinent information to the FISA court? Isn't that a fraud committed on a court?
Didn't tell them who paid for it. Didn't tell him the guy who wrote it, Christopher Steele, had a extreme bias against the president, said he was desperate to stop Trump, and didn't tell the court about Orr's involvement, both Bruce and Nellie Orr's involvement in production of the document. Didn't tell him. You and I go to court, Sean. We've talked about this before. Mark and I go to court. We got to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
If this is unredacted, what do you know or what do you suspect the American people will say? Why do people tell me? I've not seen them. Well, people, I asked them, what's it on a scale of 1 to 10? Everyone says a 10 or a 9 is the lowest number it's gotten.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say, I think Matt Gaetz and some others said it best last week. It's probably what's not there. Well, probably very clearly they didn't tell the court the things you and I just talked about, that if we were in front of court, we would have to tell them. So I think it'll be the omission, what was omitted from the FISA application, that'll be the big news. But those 302s are important too, because the pattern was every single time Bruce Ohr communicated with Chris Steele and with Glenn Simpson, he immediately went to the FBI and reported on that conversation. I want to know what those reports contain. What all did he say to these key people who were the ones who paid for and put together the dossier in the first place?
Mark, where's Spartacus Cory Booker when we need him for revealing information?
Well, here's the thing is we do need to reveal this. We know that James Comey leaked. We know that Andrew McCabe leaked. We know that actually Peter Strzok and Lisa Page leaked. We also know that the reporters that they leaked to know that they leaked. And listen, we've got names. We've got actually reporters' names. I believe that journalism is alive and well, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we get rid of this in the FBI and DOJ.
Are you
I will
confident?
say this.
I am told that there's exculpatory evidence in the 302s, Gang of Eight information, and in the unredacted FISA that they literally purposely withheld exculpatory evidence as it relates to Papadopoulos, Carter, Page. Is that true?
Well, we've heard the same things. I can tell you, seeing some of the unclassified documents, there is more of the story that has not been shared with the FISA court and actually with the American people. The time is now. We've got to get it out there, and we're calling on the president, hopefully, to release those documents.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for what you do. I know it's taken a lot of courage and work on both your parts. Thank you.